welcome to CFRK. I'm Ryan Capsar.
And I'm Corey Frazier.
This is a podcast about both writing and reading, all about books in general, and some of the things that we think are interesting going around them. So, Corey, what have you been reading the past couple months?
Yeah, couple of things, a mix of fiction and nonfiction. I went to Worldcon a few months back and had the pleasure of connecting with Mary Robinette Kowal. And so that got me kickstarted on the Lady Astronaut series. So I think I'm in book 2 of that. So now I'm reading, The Relentless Moon, I think is what I'm reading right now. It's very interesting. I really like the dynamic, without spoiling a bunch of stuff, the dynamic of this alternate universe, right? Where there's, the space program has been accelerated by this other major event, right? And, just seeing not only the characters and how they interact, but also a lot of the science that had to go into, just getting the space program up in reality and how that applies to this world, but also because it happens around the same time where it's, not sure if saying it's it's in the midst of the civil rights movement as well. So a lot of the things that we kind of take for granted as having happened in real life by the 1960s actually hadn't happened yet. So you still have a lot of those dynamics going. So that's really cool to see how all that's being mixed in and worked into an alternate reality, and those things are still converging as you go along. So that's really cool. So yeah, that's probably the big
thing. The Apple TV series that's basically like similar to that, where it's an alternate universe, but the Russians land on the moon first, which triggers a much longer space race, including like people landing on Mars and all that sort of stuff. It's a really good.
No, I haven't.
It seems really similar to that. Maybe maybe the initial series is based off that. Let me see what that's called. For All Mankind, it's called. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And
I haven't seen it, but
yeah, it's a really good series. And the civil rights thing that you're talking about. Have you read Hidden Figures, which is about all the black women that worked at NASA and their huge legacy that they impacted? Is really pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Really amazing what they did. So
it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
That was actually part of the panel that we were talking about.
Yeah.
We were talking about NASA's Hidden Figures, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I read that book a couple months ago, and what did I talk about that one with? I can't remember. I did a video on that. I'll post a link to that somewhere. So most recently I've been reading the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which I know that you said that you were on a panel or you heard Matt Dinneman speak. And I blazed through all 7 of the books that are out. So it's really interesting. The whole genre is kind of an interesting idea in general, just kind of the lit RPG where there's this idea where you actually have stats and your characters, you go up levels and you get more powerful. I think it's an interesting gimmick. I don't think I'd want to read a whole lot of it, though. It just seems like beyond this, I don't know. It just seems like after a while, it kind of get a little redundant. But he did a lot of interesting things. Every book is a different level in this dungeon, and every level has a really interesting gimmick in it, or unique feature. I mean, so it's very much like a video game in that regard. Like you could think of almost each level as like a Mega Man world, where like there's really totally different mechanics entirely around it.
Mm-hmm.
And he has some really interesting monsters in it, or critters in it. He has the Mantor, which is half man, half man, instead of half like half horse, half man. The bottom half is a man with like all the way up to the shoulders, and then the head is another like torso of a man, and they have Wolverine claws. So there's some pretty ridiculous things in there, but they're a lot of fun. And So I've been reading. I read through all of that, and then I'm reading a book by Adrian Tchaikovsky right now called Shroud, which just came out, which is about a. It's a far future. I think he is the most creative writer whenever it comes to defining alien life out there. Every single one
Okay.
of his books has been fascinating around that, and these ones are on a planet that is basically tidally locked to a gas giant, or on a moon that's tidally locked to a gas giant, and
Mm,
it's entirely no sun doesn't even no light reaches the ground, so everything's in
mm,
black and or in darkness, and all the animals speak using RF. So like it was very easy for this human ship that arrived in this system to find it because it's just like this moon is screaming, and
mhm,
we
mhm,
got to figure out what's going on there. And then of course everything
mm.
goes wrong because it's a book that happens in space, and then some people end up landing on another planet and go from there. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. So yeah. So this month used to be called National Novel Writing Month because of the group that no whole nonprofit, but last year they shut down because of the AI fiasco where they said that they would be open or encouraged disabled folks to use AI, and the entire writing community kind of flipped out on them about that, and it kind of
Mm,
killed the nonprofit because of it. But there are
mm.
some groups that are still kind of doing the same sort of thing. I know, like Portland Writers Group, they do something called WAM, where it's kind of a monthly writing program. I know Free Write has a challenge that they're doing right now. So have you been doing any writing this month? Have you been kind of trying to keep track and do the 50K?
Yeah, heads down writing. It's like writing, editing, redditing. I'm not sure what the term there is, but yeah, lots of that. As put together a novel, and have been kind of honing it, shopping it around, that sort of thing. Trying to get it out next year. But my focus is now turned to also another short story set in the same universe as the novel, as well as the sequel to the novel. So not so much writing for like some of the more themed, types of things that have been coming out, but really just growing the number of stories that I'm working on. So been doing some of that. Speaking of Portland Writers Group, I need to research them so see if I can get connected. I did get connected with another sci-fi fantasy writers group here, Rose City sci-fi writers group, and just trying to make sure I'm going out to these spaces, meeting other authors, listening, learning, and doing some writing as well. Seeing what inspires me. But yeah, really just been heads down. That's the only thing that's interesting about this period. Is like you're just like not 50,000 words, unfortunately, but at least trying to hone in with the time that I get in between the day job and otherwise to just get some things on
Yeah,
paper.
I mean, any word you need to count both the words that you edited and the words that you're writing towards it. I mean, that's how people generally count it during it. It's like anything that you write counts, even if you
Mhm.
rewrite the whole thing and throw
Right,
it out and rewrite it. Um,
right. How about yourself?
I haven't really been doing a whole lot of writing. I've gone back and reread some of the things that I've been writing so that I can try and start writing it again because it's been a couple months.
Hmm.
I've been thinking about I've mentioned this to you in the past, but I got this idea of writing about my disabilities with all my health stuff, because of my multiple chemical sensitivities and my inability to
Hmm.
do much outdoors. Writing a book where I am forced to travel
Yeah.
and all the horrible things that I'm going to encounter when I travel, like dealing with a flat tire, which for most people wouldn't be a problem, but because I probably cannot actually be next to my tire after it's been on the road, I'll have to figure out how to manage that. So I've been kind of getting back into that and like thinking
Yeah.
about what that plot would be and how to get through that story. Also thinking about the sequel to Goat's Legacy, one of my books that I've published, and where I want to go with that, and then another book that I've gotten that I'm like halfway through. I got a lot of books on the back burner, but none that I'm actively working on. Work's been like you
Yeah.
said, work's been kind of crazy, so I haven't really been able to do as much as I'd like. Um, so, but I'll get to it when I can. Hopefully,
Mhm.
with Thanksgiving coming up, I
Mhm.
plan on taking that time and do some writing. See how that goes. Maybe get back into writing some short stories too. So, yeah.
Good.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right. Well, that was the end of the script that I had written.
So,
Is there anything interesting that in your neck of the woods in terms of things that you're digging into in terms of like going to other
yeah.
world cons or other conventions,
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, glad you asked. There's actually a ton of things. One of the things I'm looking forward to is RadCon, which RadCon is up in Washington as well. It's of course smaller than WorldCon, but it's definitely got a science fiction focus. And what's really cool is that I'm really liking about from speaking with the organizers is that it's got a targeted space dedicated to like STEAM enrichment with youth. And so there's this portion where they're going to go into schools like a day or two before the actual event, and other programming they have around students and kids. So I'm going to go up there and participate in that as well. Find some opportunities to engage with the students. Also, of course, engage with other writers with science fiction interested individuals and stuff like that. So looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from an activity standpoint, uh, been looking at different things. We've chatted a bit about the whole how to go about finally getting this book out and start spending
Yeah.
time on it, right? And there's the you know I I gave the whole querying thing a try, and it's funny because now that I'm looking at the book and there's more things I want to add and edit and improve upon because while your feedback was great, I'm now looking at the book still, and I'm like, man, I can still do that even better. Not
Yeah.
just like the more you spend time with it, the more you go, oh, I could do that better. Oh, I can't believe I actually said that. Like, Ryan was saying, whatever. And so, going back into that, but it's like, once I got that first edit, not first, what was it, like number three at that point, edit done after like your feedback and some others' feedback,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I was, chilled for a second, and I said, okay, well, this is done enough to start sending it out to like agents and etc. And most of that has been either declined or just flat out no response.
Uh-huh.
One agent I met was like, oh yeah, I like to read, and they saw the sample, the opening chapter, and was like, yeah, I want to read the rest of the book, and then politely declined after reading their full manuscript. So I turned my attention a lot more, and this is maybe something to start thinking about, towards the self pub, but also
Mm-hmm.
small press, approach, and looking at, the smaller presses where, you get the traditional support, in terms of at least the different things. It may not be as big, but the traditional support. But then, you probably still retain a little bit more control because they're probably not going to tell you as much like, no, you can't do this. It's probably going to take 2 years to go through editing unless you really just disagree with everything they ask you to do.
Right.
You know, so like looking at more of that approach as well. I've sent some things out, but man, the times are just so long on so much
Yeah.
stuff. Like they're like 8 to 12 months to even get back to you, and I'm like, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Like
It really is.
sorry, what, two and a quarter years since I started writing the book, and a year and a quarter since I finished it. Right, so it's like, man, this book has been sitting here getting edited on, which is fine, because
Yeah, that's
as
part of the process.
yeah, yeah. And my thinking is always a bad book is bad forever if you put it out. So make it better. Get the proper editor in there to go in and at least if nothing else, give you like a copy edit, and it's like, line by line, what's wrong, and if you can possibly swing a bit of an evaluation to go with that, maybe a higher level evaluation, do that before I ship anything out or publish it, so that way, people aren't going to go, oh my God, Corey, you left all the stuff in there.
Have you
Um,
have you checked or sort of looked for people who might just have some commissions open for editing to see if that would be something that you could just pay them to do and be like, you know,
yeah,
figure
yeah.
out how much that might cost and get that done that way, so at least you get that feedback.
Yeah, not hard yet. Not a hard
Uh-huh.
search. Well, I've been participating in a bunch of groups,
Uh-huh.
right? Like your Facebook groups and things like that.
Yeah.
I need to have a dedicated time to go look at like a Reedsy or something else
Yeah.
where they've got solicitations up. But I been paying attention to those groups, and just been kind of pricing out the per word. I some of the, probably one of the cheapest I've seen is like maybe 0.016 per word. But honestly, I'm sure there's someone who'd be even cheaper. Just I guess it depends on the level of what their fee is, but also maybe their level of experience, that sort of thing. So I haven't done a formal put it all on the spreadsheet, get like several people, that kind of thing yet, but just ballpark figure. And of course, as because you read the far longer version, you know how long the book is, and so
Yeah.
how pricey that's going to be,
Yeah.
which is why I'm trying to do my best to kind of keep it to one edit. I know a lot of people are like, you should really step through, get it developmental, and get this, and get this, and get this. And one of the things I'm kind of going back and forth with some folks is this sense of, you know, that's a lot for a book, and you want to be effective, but also cost effective.
Yeah.
And so, I'm holding myself to, if nothing else, to get the full copy edit done. But still figure out ways to be a little bit more thrifty, because there's still money to put forth towards, the cover, or, maybe there are some other marketing things I'd like to do, to try and, go do something at a store, or to take my books and go somewhere else. And, all that stuff fits into, the overall budget, even things when it comes to content, it's one of the things I'm going to start working on now. That's part of the reason why I'm conserving the dollars, is because I don't have the time. And honestly, it's a bit of an inertia thing when you got to actually make content yourself and then go
Yeah.
post it. And if that's not already your life, you're not already on your phone, doing this and posting things. You're kind of like, I don't feel like doing it, but it's
Yeah.
necessary to build hype and to connect with people. So that's also another thing that I'm thinking about in terms of like, budget. So I say all that to say, like, I haven't put together all the editors and stuff like that and the list of folks,
Yeah.
but I have been, gathering the data, so I can start putting it into some sort of spreadsheets and doing some things.
Well, one of the
So
things
yeah.
that you could consider is that with a lot of indie authors, people look to see like, okay, this is a first person's book. They give it a little bit of grace, and the second book is where they start to be more do more consideration of the quality of the writing and see where the
Mm,
author has grown. And I know
mm,
just from talking to you that you've grown a lot from your first, the first pass and the second pass of your editing, that things have changed significantly. And I think that if you went on to write a second book and then focused on that to move the story forward, because yeah, people are okay with a variety of different quality levels as long as the story's engaging. I know
yeah.
I've been pretty forgiving with some self-published people where I looked through and they had like dozens of words misspelled that were pretty straightforward words that they should have
Mm,
caught. But the story was
mm,
interesting. It was I think it was like called Greethy or something like that. It was like a kind of a horror book, but like the story
okay.
was really interesting and pretty unique. Uh, but that's what kept me reading it, is even though the writing wasn't as good as it could have been in some cases.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
the editing, I guess it's more the editing wasn't good. But then I read
Okay.
another book where the guy kept repeating the exact in a 250-page book. He repeated the same saying about 30 times, like "shut the front door." It's like, come on, man! Like, I get it. Like this guy's saying, but
Hmm.
Could you have some variation? It's like the only thing the guy says.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, all that, and Ryan, you've published some books. I'm curious, like in your experience of going through the self publishing route, like what are some like lessons learned for you? For me.
Yeah. Well, the hardest thing is definitely getting people to read your book and actually provide
Yeah.
feedback, getting it out there. That's a big challenge because there's a lot of authors screaming out on social media about the books, about their
Yeah.
books, and it's hard to stand out. Of course,
Hmm.
nobody likes to say judge a book by its cover, but everybody judges a book by its cover. And if the cover is crappy, I think that's a big problem. Like I personally do not like AI covers. That is
Hmm.
something that I just have concerns about. I understand why people do it, but I'm
Absolutely.
also looking at people who clearly have done they've cobbled together some sort of stuff like different they've done the cover themselves, and it's like shadows aren't right, and you can tell that it's like there's a source of light from like everywhere that
Yeah.
makes it, but that
The
they're
kind
trying
of
at
way,
least.
like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and but those ones that also is like, okay, they didn't want to pay someone to do the book, but that
Yeah.
maybe is because they couldn't afford it, and that's kind of the choice that they had. And if that's kind of
Hmm.
the aesthetic that they're going with generally, and you're okay with that, and that's kind of the vibe you're going for, that can work. That's not where I've gone. I've hired an artist every time, but I'm also in the position to afford it, and I
Hmm.
think that it really does make my book stand out. Even on my own bookshelves, like my Goat's Legacy book, because of the colors that the artist used in it, it just pops on my bookshelf, and I can tell which one it is, which I
Yeah.
think is kind of interesting because there are a lot of similarities in the spines of books, and if you want that to
Hmm.
stand out, figuring out a way to get it to stand out is important too. Um, I think you do have to decide around whether you want to expand your reach or if you want to have more royalties for your books. And that's a challenge because Kindle, you can get 70% royalties if you go exclusive Kindle, but then you're
Hmm.
exclusive Kindle. And there are people who are just anti Kindle, and that can create challenges. So, what I did was I did a year for Goat's Legacy exclusive on Kindle, and then I went
Okay.
non-exclusive for all my books kind of at the same time, and then pushed them to Ingram Spark, and Barnes and Noble. The only challenge I had with Ingram Spark, for some reason, it did not like the cover that I had my artist make. I could not get it
Hmm.
to publish a paperback version, so I have paperback versions for two of my books, my collection of short stories and my Goat's Legacy, but only ebooks for Misadventures of Peanut Butter Boys because I couldn't get the cover to work. I tried
Hmm.
so many times and I just could not get the cover to work, and I don't know why. It doesn't really
Hmm.
provide good explanations for that. So that's one of the challenges. Even as you get pieces of work, trying to make sure that it works for what you're trying to do across all these different platforms is challenging. And if you don't, I'm not super proficient with a lot of these tools out there like GIMP or Photoshop or whatever to try and change the sizing. That leads to some issues, I think. But I've
Yeah.
also paid to have some things pushed out, promo like $100 or something like that. I don't know how much it helped, but it got something out there at least. Um, so yeah, and I mean part of the other thing that I've done is gone through and started doing YouTube stuff to try and do the social media stuff in
Yeah.
other places to add to my books.
Mhm.
But it's everything is about trying to grow your audience, and everything is challenging with that. Uh, just so many different things to try and do, and nothing nothing ever just goes viral. It doesn't work that way generally, but that's okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I mean, that's why I want
Yeah.
to try and do something else, and aside from just doing my own thing and trying to have this our podcast here where
Yeah.
we talk about other things and maybe eventually bring on some other people that we might know, um,
Mhm.
and talk about this sort of stuff to expand our audience in other ways. So
Yeah. 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 It's kind of the same thing. Is going into this content creation space and thinking about, okay, where's the content? A lot of it's like, okay, it's got to be around the book, but it's also got to be around me as a person. And I'm like, because people are going to get tired of just seeing the book from what I hear. And so I'm like, okay, how do I do that? And one of the things I've been doing is, so I have like a personal, for example, on Instagram, like a personal page. I have a more professional kind of account, and then I have the new one I created for Orion Book Series, where I
mm-hmm.
talk more about. And my thing is to find a way to make sure I am tagging them, so that way, yeah. So like, if there's something personal and it was about me drawing and getting back in the drawing, but I was trying to do it digitally, which is still hard for me, compared to like just drawing right here on the drafting table or whatever. So I was like, oh, let me take that post, let me link that to the Orion book series so people can say, oh, this is the thing that I do, is because if you go to that, you'll see like comic art, from back when the book was a comic book. And same thing, like, so if I do like talks or whatever, I may link it to the series if it's relevant, to the series. So for example, in Silicon Forest, I did a talk on like, it's never too late in pursuing your dreams, but it was centered around the whole experience of writing the novel
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like my journey there. So I would link that, or do a collaboration with the Orion book series on that, or if it's getting any awards in any of these contests I've entered the book into, then that's like maybe my professional account and the Orion book series. So it's like Orion book series and the author, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to do more of that simply, and that's already like takes a lot.
It
Just
does. I mean, even I have a pretty simple blog site that I have like links to my books, and I put book
Mhm.
reviews on there. That's a lot of work, and what you're talking about is adding the extra art component to things and figuring out how to add that, and that takes a lot of work. But do you have an Orion book like website or anything right now?
Yeah. So right now I have my personal professional website, and I just created a slash writing
Uh-huh.
to it. So you can go there and look at, it has like about me, how to join the newsletter, which has there isn't one yet. Because like I'm waiting for there to be a little more critical mass before I start putting one out, basically more than just me and a couple of friends. I can afford to be a little bit late, when they know, oh, okay, you're building this newsletter. But when start people who don't really know me start going into it, it's like, okay, I need to put out a newsletter now. But
Yeah.
you can also find out about the books that are in work. So I have like the first novels there, the short story, the World War II short story is there, and also book two are all listed. It's got like descriptions and different things, and just kind of way of getting people interested in, oh, this is what's happening, with like little placeholder, images for a cover, basically a book icon,
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Have you thought about doing it? Have you done any Kickstarters in the past before for like either books or video games or anything?
I have not. I want. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking is I've done a bunch of them for both books and for
Oh, really?
video games, but for video games, I think Mina the Howler is an interesting kind of case study on this sort of thing, because they're the people who did their Yacht Club games. They did Shovel Knight, and they're doing
Mm-hmm.
this other kind of game. And what they'll do is they'll post videos, or not videos. They'll post updates to Kickstarter and say, here's this character or monster that we're creating, and it'll have
Okay.
all the different images of it and the animation and a little bit of the backstory about it, and that's all they send out. And so in some ways, that's really all your newsletter needs to be, is to say, here's this character, here's what they, their special abilities. I mean, maybe you could do something like the old Marvel cards from the 90s where they had like, power capabilities and all that, and you include like make cards for all of them, and I know that's a lot of extra work, but if you already have a drawing of them, you just include that in there, and then you're like, here's some of their stats and here's some of their background, where they came from, and you just send out some of those like once a month as part of your newsletter, and then you have this whole history of it, and then it's already on your webpage too, because you make it a blog post, and you email it out, and all that's on your website then.
Yeah. That's a good idea for the newsletter. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, so many things. That was one thing I was definitely going to do for like the websites, like a character. I'm not sure what you call it. I don't know, character. There's something that starts with a C or a K or something. But like character Mondays or something, right? And like feature this character and talk about them a little bit without spoiling much or something. Yeah. But yeah, in regards to Kickstarter, one of the things I want to do is I want to make a card game. And I think I've told you this, but like I want this to be a whole universe where people immerse themselves in it, play card games, go to a wiki. I've thought about creating a wiki site where you can, learn more about the different characters and things in case you're interested. One of the ideas for the book I have is like putting like QR codes in the margin or something to help people be like, oh, what's this thing again? And then you go look it up or whatever. You're on your phone versus having to leave the book. But like, the Kickstarter thing, I've kicked around the idea because at first my thinking was, oh man, I need there to be more of something substantive in order to give them, in order to make it worthwhile to back it in some way. Because otherwise, someone may say, oh well, just work on the book in your free time and then self-publish. But I was like, well, maybe there's other things I could do. So I was like, maybe at certain levels, you get like the prologue for free. So maybe you're like, hey, $5. And I'm like, hey, here you go, prologue, or there's one any denomination. Maybe it's like, so you give them $1, here's the prologue, enjoy. Whether you back further, get the book comes out, whatever. Then maybe there's actually buy the book, and then maybe there's like signed versions. Maybe there's like, at a certain level, just skipping ahead, certain level, you get put in the book somehow as a cameo, or I don't know, or whatever.
Well, for most book Kickstarters, they don't really do the whole character thing because the book's already written. So instead, what they normally do is they have, digital versions, they have paperback versions, they have hardback versions, and then they have things like pins or bookmarks or things like that. Like when I backed the Brandon Sanderson one, where he had his 4 special projects, it was all bookmarks and pins that you got with it, and hardback, really nice hardbacks. And when I backed the whatchamacallit, which one was it? Blood Over Brighthaven. Oh, that's the book that I did with Blood Over Brighthaven's the one that I did with Hidden Figures. That one, you get a special edition of the hardback and a couple pins with it, and I mean the whole point is to really help the author in a lot of ways. But some of those might be good ones to kind of reference for that. And I mean, if you're going to do a wiki, you may as well have that be your newsletter whenever you first start out with it. I mean, that's doing double work for that just seems silly. So,
I had you said something about if I'm doing the wiki, that might as well be the newsletter, and then it cut. Sorry.
Oh, because otherwise you're going to do duplicative work, and it just kind of seems silly. Right. Yeah, just at least be efficient with your time. Everybody's busy, so spend your time where it makes sense. But I do think that I like Blood Over Brighthaven and Sword of Kaigen is kind of Sword of Kaigen are kind of similar examples of like the self-publishing that turned into something else. Both of those books were self-published by a woman named M.L. Luong, and then they were picked up by Wraithmark Creative and published into these fancier versions of it. And it's kind of like an indie pub that a lot of YouTubers and a lot of indie authors are kind of pivoting towards. So getting something out there and getting traction with it can be a really good way to eventually go to the Kickstarter route. Once you've had a couple wins on some of these things. I mean,
Yeah.
Matt Dinneman, he got picked up by a traditional publisher
Mm-hmm.
from after his stuff, same with like Hugh Howley and all that. But they had some success from getting people to review their books.
Yeah.
One of the things that I remember before, like I used to have, like I mentioned a couple of those books that I got that were indie books. They were actually, people found me because of my book reviews on Amazon or on Goodread, and they
Mm.
actually contacted me and sent me the books and asked for reviews.
Oh wow.
I'm not really sure how they went about doing that. I think I might want to try and dig into that a little bit because I gave really in-depth reviews because I wanted this person to be successful. Like Evan Winters was one of the guys that I reviewed, and his books have kind of blown up since then. Not that I had a whole lot to do with that, but
Mm-hmm.
his was like described as a Song of Ice and Fire type level book, and I was like, I described it as a different type of book, and he was like, yeah, that's actually the type of series I was more thinking about. It was like the Blood Raven, I think it was called, or something like that. But it was like two guys, and they were buddies, and they got magical
Mm-hmm.
powers, and it was felt similar, but it was had a very uh, Afro Caribbean type slant to it that was really interesting.
Yeah.
That I really enjoyed, and I haven't really been able to get into the second book for whatever reason, but I haven't, and I keep needing to. It's probably
Mm-hmm.
just because it's been so long since I read the first book that I don't remember it at all. But I absolutely love the first book. So, yeah, I think that's another approach to try and get that popularity,
Yeah.
and then figuring out how to add things from there. Because I think if you try and do everything all at once, you're not
Yeah.
going to get anything done. Just
Sure.
focus on one thing and kind of building out from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Going back to something you were talking about, how they found you for reviews. Isn't that like a whole? I don't want to call it career or something, but not that it isn't. I'm just that it's like it's another pathway where you could be seen as the kind of person who gets these advanced copies, right? For review because they know you to be a good reviewer, and that's also a thing. Or at least that's what I've been reading, and so I'm curious if that's something you're
Yeah,
hitting.
I think that's true. I mean, from an author perspective, I know Lev Grossman, the guy who wrote the Magician series. He used to be a book reviewer for like the New York Times before he went and wrote The Magicians.
Mm,
But yeah, I kind of want to get back into that and publishing those reviews again. I think part of it has been that I stopped doing reviews on Goodreads because I got tired of the whole Amazon thing. But if I want to do that, I feel like I need to get back on doing reviews on Amazon itself, back on Goodreads, put it on Storygraph, and publishing it to my own blog again, because I send out my blog as a newsletter.
yeah.
Um, I think it probably was found through something like Amazon or Goodreads, because I did have a decent following on Goodreads. I just kind of stopped writing stuff on there
Mm,
because I just didn't want to give my data to Amazon. But I mean, like, yeah, if you give good reviews and you're a consistent reviewer and you talk about the books, I think, yeah, you'll get advanced copies. I mean, that's also part of the reason why I did the YouTube portion, because a
mhm.
lot of YouTubers do get advanced copies or they're asked to review books. Of course, they also get overwhelmed by it because they're like, you know, one of the most popular YouTubers, and all of a sudden they're getting like thousands of requests. I mean, that's overwhelming as well.
Mhm.
So it just kind of depends on how you want to try and go about doing that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of niches for that sort of thing. Just focusing on reviews. I mean, that's why my videos are kind of review slash kind of interrogating books, looking at it from two different perspectives, like a nonfiction book or a fiction book, or two fiction books and how they interrelate with each other.
Mhm.
I think doing something like like a manga or a comic book with another book would be interesting as well. I think it'd be harder with comics because you would have to probably find like a graphic novel to compare with something instead of a individual issue.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think that could be pretty cool as well, depending on what you were working on, what other book you were reading it with.
yeah, yeah. Or maybe pair a whole arc. You know, maybe there's like a, I don't know. I'm gonna date myself, you know, an extinction agenda or something like that. You know, reading comics in the '90s here. You know, but like, you know, something that's, you know, got a whole arc, or Civil War. You know, for example. That
Well, I mean, those are what's generally turned into graphic novels anyway, right?
Yeah,
It's like, oh, we're going to take this arc and turn it into that.
Yeah, yeah. Something, a bound edition of some kind.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Immortal Hulk would be another one that you could say, here's,
Right.
you know, here's, it's self-contained and it starts and ends, and you could say, okay, this is what I'm going to compare to this other series.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
definitely, I could see that. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that kind of covers what I wanted to try and chat about. I think this is a pretty good start for our first episode.
Yeah.
And you know, if you have any comments or things that you think we should talk about, leave a comment down below. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Anything you want to plug before we sign off here?
That's the part you get nervous about plugging something because you're like, it's not ready yet. You know, it's not to everybody else's standards. But, you know, like I said, I have a book that I'm working on, Orion Heavenfall. It is being submitted to various competitions and things like that. It does still need some more editing, so it will be into 2026. But if you're interested in following along, you could just go to my personal page, Corey with an E, afrazier.com, or yes, actually, sorry, Corey A. Frazier, Instagram. I have to get used to saying this. Or if you want to go to the website, you'll find all the links, coreyafrazier.com/.
We'll put a link in the description below. For me, I've got wizardness.com, which is my website. You can find some short stories on there, some book reviews. I have a YouTube channel, Ryan Capsar, which I'll link down below. And I've got my books. They're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and on Ingram Press and bookshop.org. And I'll put links down below. And yeah, thanks for watching. Really appreciate your time. Great talking with you, Corey. Hopefully we'll have another one of these in about a month.